Hey guys, welcome Mild Moments History. Tonight, your bed isn't where you think it is. It's not a mattress. It's a pile of straw, half rotted, still damp from last night's storm. Something moves in it, not once but again. You freeze, not from fear, from routine. Because by now, you know whatever it is, it's not alone. You reach to scratch before you're even fully awake. Not because you want to, but because that's how every day begins with the itch. A tiny rebellion under the skin. A whisper from a world you can't see, but feel with terrifying clarity. Your blanket is wool, heavy with last month's sweat, last year's dust, and 10,000 legs that don't belong to you. You tell yourself it's fine, that everyone itches, that it's just winter dryness, that it'll pass. But it doesn't. You scratch harder. You tell no one. You think medieval times were all candlelight and castles. Try sharing a hay bed with two brothers, one goat, and a colony of lice who think your scalp is prime real estate. You are 13, or maybe older. No one kept good track. Your body is thin from a summer of thin soups. Your skin is covered in stories no one asked you to write, red trails, blood crusts, small moons of broken skin. Each mark a memory, each memory a surrender. There's no soap. Not really. The closest thing you have is ash. Sometimes your mother mixes it with vinegar. Sometimes you steal mint leaves and crush them into paste just to feel like you're doing something. It stings, but the itching comes back. Always. At church, you sit alone. Not by choice. The girls behind you whisper. You hear them say, "You smell of goats." You wish it were just goats. You've learned to braid your hair in ways that hide the scabs. You've learned to laugh softly when someone jokes about lice, as if yours aren't building towers at the nape of your neck. What time is it? Where you are? I'd love to know where you're listening from. Somewhere clean, somewhere quiet. Somewhere no one has ever had to share their bed with fleas. And shame, I hope so. And if you like these soft, strange slow dives into the parts of history no one wants to remember, maybe tap that subscribe button. Or just stay. That's enough too. I'm glad you're here. Now, dim the lights. Let the silence settle. Imagine the straw under your back, the smoke in your throat, the distant bell from the chapel tower tolling 6 times before dawn. You don't know it yet, but the priest will notice you today. Not because you've sinned, but because you've scratched too loudly. He will call it a curse. He will tie a charm to your wrist and tell you to sleep facing east, that it will go away if you believe hard enough. It won't. Because what's inside you isn't a demon. It's just a colony. A crawling truth no one wants to name. And tonight, we're going to name it. You're not in your bed. You're in history. And history itches. You wake up before the sun. Not because you want to, but because your shoulder is already itching and your fingers have already moved. The scratch wakes you. Not the bell, not the rooster. Just that one spot behind your ear that keeps returning, like an old promise. Your bed isn't a bed. It's a flattened pile of straw laid directly on dirt. There's no blanket, just a wool wrap that smells of goat fire smoke and something older. The straw crackles beneath you. Some of it moves slightly, as if it breathes. You don't look. The hut is quiet. Your brothers are still asleep. One of them scratches in his sleep too. You hear it, the soft rasp of fingernails on skin. Your sister mutters something and kicks off the dog who's crept into the center of the warmth. You share this room with 7 bodies, none of them small, and maybe 300 unseen ones, all awake. You sit up slowly. The cold hits your back like a slap. You rub your arms. They sting. Not from the cold, from the lines you left last night. The yes I saw, the ones you traced with half-asleep fingers. You scratch again. You wish for a moment that you could shed your skin like a snake. Just leave it there in the straw, and walk away clean. There's food, of a sort. A bit of hard bread cracked in half. A smear of fat on the edge, if you're lucky. You chew slowly. Not from politeness, from caution. You've learned that chewing quickly makes you forget the itch. And when you forget it, it comes back stronger. The warmth from the fire doesn't reach the bench you're sitting on. Your feet are bare. They press into the packed dirt of the floor. The cold seeps upward not just into your toes, but into your bones. And with it, another twitch. Another scratch, behind the knee this time. Your mother ladles something into a bowl. You pretend to eat. You press the bowl to your face because it's warm. And because warmth is the only thing that makes you feel like you're still human, not just a moving shape full of crawling things. Your sister offers you a clove of garlic. Rub it, she says. The old woman swears by it. You take it. You nod. But inside you know they always swear. Until the next cure, and the next. The priest says it's punishment. From God. For pride, for laziness, for whatever sin fits the day. The midwife says it's in the straw, or the goats, or your own blood thin and spoiled from birth. The neighbor says it's your fault, that you don't wash, that you don't sweep enough, that you bring it in with your hair. But you remember bathing in the stream last week. You remember scrubbing until your skin turned red. You remember the way your hands shook from cold, and how that night the itching came back stronger than ever. You light a candle. You whisper a prayer. You tie a thread around your wrist dyed red with madder root. Someone said it keeps the devils out. Or maybe in. The church bell rings. You don't stand up right away. You sit there still, listening to the fire snap, feeling the weight of what lives under your sleeves. It started on your wrists, or maybe behind your ears, but now it's on your back, your thighs, the bend of your elbows. You feel it moving, not just on the surface but beneath, like breath, like thought, like something intelligent. Your cousin has it too. So does the boy who brings firewood. So does the woman who braids straw mats behind the chapel. But no one talks about it directly. You just look at each other a little too long, scratch the same places, avoid touch. Winter is coming. You'll sleep closer now. 8 to a bed, maybe 10. And every night 100 more little guests will curl into the warmth between your ribs. You tuck your hands into your sleeves, not to hide the wounds, but to just try to make it stop. It won't, but still you try. It started with a single scratch. You didn't even notice it. Not really. Just a moment the back of your wrist, an idle flick of the fingers as you pulled your sleeves down against the cold. The kind of movement your body makes without asking permission. At first, you thought it was nothing. A bite maybe, or straw. The straw in your bed always poked through the cloth if you moved too much. You turned in the night. You always do. But that morning something lingered. A rawness, a heat. You rub at it absently while stirring the pot. Oatmeal. Or what passes for it now. Grain water, a pinch of salt if you're lucky. You're stirring slow, rhythmically left, right, and your wrist itches again. You press your sleeve down, scratch harder. The spoon clinks against the iron. Your mother notices. She doesn't say anything, just looks. Then turns back to chopping the root vegetables, her knife dull and rhythmic like the sound of church bells in rain. You tell yourself it's nothing. You even whisper it, nothing. But the itch stays. By afternoon, it's a patch, a soft red bloom spreading under the skin. It's warm to the touch and patterned now, strange lines and little hills like tiny trails left by something that doesn't want to be seen. You scratch again, this time harder. It feels like relief. But when you pull your sleeve back down, you see thin streaks of blood where your nails drag too far. You wipe them on your skirt before anyone notices. The neighbor girl sees you scratch and shifts slightly away on the bench. Not much. Just enough. Like a shadow of a thought. She doesn't speak, but you feel it in the silence that blooms between words. By evening it's worse. You can't stop moving. The itch has a rhythm now, its own heartbeat. Behind your ears, on your neck, the base of your spine, your wrists, your ankles. You feel like a map and someone is drawing on you with burning ink. You try washing. You ask your mother if you can take the last of the soap slivers to the stream. She gives you a look. It says soap isn't for itches, but she lets you go. The water is cold, biting, almost cruel. You scrub until your skin shines red. For a while you think it's working. The cold numbs everything. But when you lie down again in the straw, the itch returns angrier now, like it knows you tried to chase it away. And it brings friends. You don't sleep much that night. You dream of ants, of bark peeling off your arms, of whispers beneath your skin. When you wake, your legs are tangled in the blanket. your fingers stiff with dried blood. In the dim morning, you see that your nails are rimmed with it, tiny dark crescents like moons that don't wax or wane. You clean them with a twig. You don't want anyone to know. At breakfast, your brother scratches too. Just once, just a twitch at the collarbone. You both pretend not to notice. There's no point. You've seen what happens when people talk about itching. You remember the boy last spring, the one sent to the sheep shed, then out of the village entirely. No one said his name after that. Your mother looks at your wrist while handing you a bowl. Her eyes pause on the raw skin, then keep moving. She still says nothing. But now you both know. You're not the only one. You think about wrapping your arms in cloth, about tying your hands together at night. You don't. You're afraid of waking up and finding the cloth soaked through. You're more afraid of what it might mean if it isn't. The second night, you try not to scratch. You fold your arms under your head. You whisper prayers to saints whose names you barely remember. You count sheep. You imagine cool water on your skin. You picture a world without itching, without red, without shame. It doesn't work. By the third day, it's no longer just an itch. It's a knowing. You feel it in the spaces between your thoughts, in the moments between bell tolls, in the silence after someone calls your name. It spreads not fast, but steady, like a story being passed hand to hand in the dark. You start to notice it in others. The slow drag of fingers behind an ear, the hesitant rub of a neck, the scratch that gets hidden in a sleeve. Everyone's pretending. You learn to hide it too. You scratch in private press instead of drag rub, through cloth instead of under it. You try to name it rash heat irritation. Anything but what it really is. Because once you name it, it becomes real. And real things can be punished. That evening your sister asks if she can borrow your scarf, the red one. You hesitate. Your fingers move to your neck instinct. She sees the motion. Her eyes pause for a beat too long. Then she says never mind and walks away. You don't blame her. You wouldn't want your scarf either. That night, you lie awake longer than usual. The wind is soft through the cracks in the wall. You can hear mice in the grain bin. Your body hums with heat. Not fever, just the rising tide of something that won't let you rest. You close your eyes. You don't say the word. But it knows its own name, and it's already under your skin. It's not just you anymore. You know that now. You're sitting near the fire watching the steam rise off a dented tin pot when your brother does it a quick scratch at the base of his neck. Just one movement. Then stillness, like it never happened. You almost say something. Almost. But your fingers twitch against your own sleeve instead. You look away. Across the room, your cousin shifts under the blanket. She's been quiet all morning. Then slowly, deliberately, she pulls her sleeve down over her hand. Not to cover the cold, but to hide the way she's been scratching, just like you. You look around, really look. The neighbor boy sitting by the door, his foot drags across his shin once, twice. His mother says his boots are too tight, but you've seen that look before. The way he flinches when his heel hits a raw spot. No one speaks of it, no one has to. Your father used to say winter makes the house smaller. You're starting to understand what he meant. The walls haven't moved, but you feel the weight of everyone inside pressing in, breathing closer, itching closer. At night, you sleep next to your sister. Her back against yours, your legs tangled. She doesn't snore. But lately, she's started twitching in her sleep. At first, you thought it was dreaming. Now you know better. Her fingers move too fast for dreams. She doesn't say anything. Neither do you. Sometimes you hear her wake herself up with a sharp intake of breath, the kind that comes after pain, after surprise. You wait for her to say something. She never does. In the dark, you whisper to yourself, "It's not just me." And somehow that makes it worse. Because if it were just you, maybe it could be fixed. Maybe it could be hidden. But now, it's everywhere. In every shared blanket. In every borrowed scarf. In every patch of straw that crackles too softly in the night. You remember a moment 2 days ago when your uncle handed you a bag of dried herbs from the garden. He said to grind them with salt and rub it behind your ears. You said thank you. But the way he said it, the way he held the bag out, not quite touching you, made your stomach twist. Because he knew. He didn't say the word, but he knew. That afternoon, while fetching water, you saw the woman with the twisted back scratching her arm in broad daylight. No shame. Just a slow, open scrape along skin so dry it cracked. A dog sat beside her twitching the same way. You felt a kinship then, and a quiet dread. At supper, your mother sets the bowls down with more force than usual. No one says anything, but everyone eats faster. You pretend to chew. Mostly, you just hold the warmth in your mouth, as if that might help somehow. Your cousin drops her spoon, bends to pick it up, and as she rises, you catch sight of her wrist, red-ridged, flaked. She sees your eyes on it and covers it quickly, then smiles too wide. The silence after that is heavier than the smoke hanging from the rafters. Later, when you're all sitting around the fire, your grandfather clears his throat. He doesn't speak often, but tonight he says, "In the old days, we burned the beds." No one replies. The fire crackles. Your little brother yawns. But something settles in the room, a memory maybe, or a warning. You think about the beds, about the straw, about the way it smells when damp, when warm, when alive. That night before lying down, you brush your fingers over the edge of your blanket. You feel movement, but it could be anything. It could be imagination. It could be dust. It could be history. Your sister whispers something. "Did you scratch?" she asks. You pause. "No." She nods. "Me neither." But both of you know it's a lie. Sleep doesn't come easily. You lie on your side, trying not to move, trying not to breathe too deeply in case it wakes something. You think about how close everyone is, how close everything is. The itch under your collar, the boy next door, the straw between your toes, the word no one says. Scabies, lice, pests. You wish it were a curse. Curses can be broken, but this is a quiet thing, a crawling thing, passed not through anger or sin, but through touch, through warmth, through kindness, through love. And that's what makes it cruel. Because you didn't do anything wrong. You only shared a bed, a scarf, a spoon, a moment. Now your skin is a battlefield, and so is hers, and his, and theirs. You close your eyes. You tell yourself, it's not just me. And you hope somehow that means you're not alone. But in the dark, you hear someone else scratch. And you don't feel comfort. You feel surrounded. You didn't mean to look. That's how it always begins. You roll over in the dark, pulling the wool blanket up to your chin, and something brushes your arm. Not hard, just different. Not straw, not thread, not warmth, movement. You freeze. Hold your breath. Listen. The room is still. The others sleep. Your sister breathes in hiccups beside you. The baby mutters in a basket. The fire has long gone out, and the cold settles in like a second skin. But under your first skin, something else is awake. You wait, thinking it was your imagination. But then it moves again. Just a twitch. A shuffle of something light, fast, familiar somehow. You felt it before on your scalp maybe, behind your knee, on the back of your neck when the wind isn't blowing. You open your eyes. And in the faint glow of moonlight, filtering through the slats in the wall, you see it. On the edge of the blanket, just above your hand, a pale thing, tiny legs, long shape, moving slow. You stare. You don't breathe. You tell yourself it's a spider, or lint, or something else. But deep down, you know what it is. You've known all along. The lice don't hide anymore. Not when they've already claimed the bed. You pull your hand back gently, slowly, trying not to shake the fabric too much, because the lice don't like to be disturbed. They run faster when they're frightened. And tonight, you don't want to chase them. You just want to sleep. But your hand burns now, not with heat, with shame, because this isn't the first time. Because yesterday, you picked one from your collar and crushed it before anyone saw. Because last week, you combed your hair behind the barn, hoping no one would notice the flakes falling like ash. And because tonight, it's not just in your hair. It's in your blanket, in your bed, your space, your skin. You pull the blanket tighter anyway, because what else can you do? There's only one blanket, only one bed, only one room. You press your arms against your sides, curl your fingers into fists. Try to will the movement away. It doesn't help. Now the itching spreads. Or maybe the fear spreads first and the itching follows like a loyal dog. You scratch just once, then hate yourself for it. You listen for movement, not from the lice, from the others. Because if they hear you scratching, they'll know. And no one wants to be the first to admit it. So you keep still, silent. Even when the thing crawls across your ankle. Even when your scalp pulses like something inside it is knocking to be let out. You close your eyes and try to imagine clean things. Soap, wind, a bed without straw, a pillow that doesn't twitch. A world where the only things that move in the night are dreams. You count backward. Not sheep, those are warm, too full of wool. You count something colder, like stars, like stones in a frozen river, like your hope. Eventually, sleep comes. Not because it's peaceful, but because exhaustion wins. And in the early light of morning, when your sister turns in her sleep and mutters about a tickle on her neck, you pretend not to hear. You just lie there, still, quiet, waiting for the blanket to move again. You try everything. You fold your arms beneath the blanket. You press your legs together. You tuck your chin into your shoulder to stop your hair from brushing your neck. You don't move. You don't breathe too deep. You think maybe if you're perfectly still, they'll stop. But they don't. The itching doesn't roar. It whispers. A rustle beneath your ribs. A tickle just above the knee. A flutter at the back of your scalp, like wind that never came from outside. You open your eyes. It's still night. The room is dark but not silent. Someone coughs. Someone else turns in their sleep. The fire is long gone, but the smoke lingers old and cold. It smells like damp wool and boiled root. You don't know what time it is, only that you haven't slept. Not really. You count the ceiling beams. 1, 2, 3. You get to 9 before you have to scratch. Just once. A quick drag of your nails behind your shoulder blade. Then you stop. Then you hate yourself. You turn onto your side. Bad idea. The spot behind your knee flares, so you curl into a ball, arms, tight legs tucked. You blink at the faint glow through the cracks in the wall. Moonlight, or just your imagination trying to stay awake. You breathe, in, out, slow. It still doesn't help. Your skin feels alive, not like a part of you, like something with you, beside you, around you. You whisper a prayer. To whom, you're not sure anymore. You say it under your breath, not for salvation, just for sleep. But even the saints seem distant tonight. At some point, you sit up. You press your feet to the floor, feel the cold rise through your bones. You walk barefoot across the room, careful not to wake anyone. Each step crunches softly on old dirt, scattered ash, maybe something else. You open the door. Outside, the world is silver. The moon is high. The frost has settled like lace across the empty ground. No sounds, no wind, just the deep stillness of a sleeping village. You don't step outside. You just lean against the doorway, letting the cold bite your face. It's sharp, almost clean. You wish you could breathe it through your skin. Let it chase the crawling out, but you know it won't. Still you stay, until your toes go numb. Until the floor creaks behind you. You glance back, your sister has turned over. A murmur in her sleep. Then stillness. You slip back to bed. You try not to think of how warm the lice must be, now hidden in the creases of your blanket. How safe they are in this world you can't leave. You lay down slowly, trying not to disturb them. You feel like a guest in your own body. A host maybe. Not to spirits or demons, just to tiny silent lives that never ask your permission. The itch is softer now, not because it's gone, but because you're too tired to feel it fully. You close your eyes. You dream. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you just drift somewhere between remembering and forgetting. You see a river wide and black with silver lines like threads pulled tight across it. You step into it, and it's warm. Too warm. Your skin tingles, not with cold, with motion. You look down. The river is not water. It's moving, crawling. You wake with a gasp. No light yet, just the hollow sound of breathing around you, yours and theirs. You're sweating, you're freezing, you're exhausted. You scratch your ankle, then your arm, then you stop. You ball your fists and press them against your chest. You try again. To sleep, to forget, to pretend. But the night is long, and the itch is patient. You wake to the smell of garlic. Not the kind in soups, if you were lucky enough to have soup, but the raw kind. Bitter sharp, clinging to the air like smoke in a closed room. It stings your nose. It makes your eyes water. But you sit up anyway, because maybe, just maybe this time, it might help. Your mother hands you a clove, already crushed, wrapped in a bit of cloth torn from the edge of a curtain. Rub it in, she says not unkindly, behind the ears first, then the wrists. You obey slowly. The paste is rough, cold. The cloth is too thin, and the juice leaks through stinging, open scratches. You wince, but you don't complain, because complaining means you still believe in relief. And by now, you've learned belief is dangerous. Your sister watches from the other side of the fire. She doesn't say anything, but her sleeves are rolled down past her knuckles, and you can see the redness blooming like angry flowers across her hands. She won't admit it, not yet, but the garlic is for both of you. Later that day, the ash comes out. Not holy ash, not from a priest's hand, just the kind scraped from the bottom of the stove after the bread was baked. Your aunt mixes it with vinegar and goat's milk, what little is left, and murmurs that the village healer used to swear by this. You want to believe her. You do. So you kneel in the dirt, bare-chested, and let her smear it onto your back. It's cool at first, then warm, then burning. You bite your lip. Your body trembles not from pain, but from how much you want this to work. She finishes with a smear across your forehead. There, she whispers. That should confuse them. Them, as if the things in your skin are thinking. Maybe they are. That night, you sleep on a different blanket, one left in the shed since summer. It smells of mold and forgotten rain, but at least it hasn't been lived in. You wrap it around your skin, still sticky with ash and vinegar and hope, and lie still. You count backward from 100. You almost reach 27 before the itch returns. It's slower now, like they're watching, waiting, testing your resolve. You try not to move. But your elbow twitches, then your neck, then everything. The ash didn't stop them. It just gave them new roads to walk. You wake before dawn, skin streaked with gray garlic crushed into your pillow. Your arms are covered in soft scratches, not fresh, but not healed. You're not bleeding, but you're not better. Your aunt says, one more try. She brings out goat fat this time, melted, mixed with crushed thyme and salt. It smells wrong, like something too rich for your world. She rubs it onto your scalp, into your temples, beneath your arms. You close your eyes. For a moment, it feels like being touched by someone who remembers who you were before all this. Not cursed, not disgusting, just tired. She tucks your hair behind your ear when she finishes, doesn't say anything, just nods and walks away. You sit there for a long time, breathing in the scent of fat and time pretending your skin belongs to you again. That night, the lice return anyway. They're not loud. They never are. They don't roar or scream or gloat. They just continue, like wind through cracks, like silence between footsteps, like a war that doesn't want to win, only last. You scratch. You sigh. You whisper, please, but they don't listen. And neither does the garlic, or the ash, or the goat fat, because these aren't cures. They're rituals, small offerings to the gods of comfort, things to do with your hands when your heart is too tired to pray. Still, you do them, because not doing them would mean surrender. And even now, covered in wounds and shame and pace that never works, you're not ready to give up. Not yet. Not tonight. It happens on a Thursday, or maybe a Tuesday. The days blend now. You mark them by itching, by how long since the last paste burned your skin, by how many nights you've whispered, please, to no one at all. You're at the chapel. Not for prayer, not really, just because it's warmer there. The stone holds the sun longer, and the air smells of smoke and beeswax instead of straw and sweat. You sit near the back where the floor slopes, and the shadows are long. The nun enters quietly. She doesn't wear shoes. The hem of her robe brushes the floor like fog. She doesn't speak, just moves from person to person, offering folded cloths, slices of boiled turnip, or sometimes a soft look that lasts a heartbeat longer than needed. When she reaches you, you look down. You tuck your wrists into your sleeves. You pray not to God, but to whatever spirit governs shame that she won't notice, or worse, that she will. She kneels beside you anyway. Her hands are warm, weathered, with small cuts and calluses. She doesn't ask your name. She doesn't ask to see. She simply reaches into the folds of her robe and pulls out a tiny clay vial, stoppered with wax. You know that smell before she opens it. Lavender, faint, crushed under olive oil and smoke. There's something else too, something green wild like thyme left out in the rain. She dips her fingers into the oil. You flinch, not because it hurts, because no one has touched you like that in weeks, maybe months. She lifts your sleeve, gently, no force, no rush. You see your own wrist for the first time in 2 days. It's not just red, it's ridged, cross-hatched with skin that isn't skin anymore. Lines you don't remember drawing. The nun says nothing. She presses the oil in. Slowly. She doesn't smear, she presses, a rhythm to it. A quiet, small mercy. You blink, not because of pain, because your throat tightens in a way it hasn't in a long time. She moves to the other wrist. The scent follows, not strong, but steady. You remember being small, sick, your mother humming something you never understood, placing warm hands on your back. That same feeling rises now, of being seen even in your worst moment. The nun wraps your wrists in linen, pale, soft, almost too clean for you. Still she ties them, twice. Like she's sealing something in. You whisper, will it help? She doesn't answer, just places the vial in your hand and closes your fingers around it. Then, like fog, she moves on. You don't cry, not really, but you sit there longer than you meant to. And when you finally rise, the chapel is nearly empty. The candles are low. Your hands smell like something other than fear. That night, you don't use ash. You don't crush garlic. You don't ask your aunt for anything. You just press your fingers to the linen wraps, feel the faint coolness left behind by her touch, and lie down in the straw. You still itch, of course you do. But it's different, not gone. Just quieter, like the lice are listening now. Like they too remember the hands that didn't recoil. You sleep. Not deeply, but real. And for the first time in weeks, your dreams don't crawl. His name was Toma. Or maybe it wasn't. No one says it now. Not since that day by the well when the women dropped their buckets mid-lift and stepped back, not with fear but with something colder. It started with his hands. Small, always moving, always scratching, first behind the ear, then the back of the neck, then openly over his collarbone under his shirt along his arms. Red marks appeared where they shouldn't, thick, shiny, angry. At first, the mothers whispered. Bad hygiene, one said. He never boils his clothes, another muttered. But you saw him, you knew him. You sat beside him once during a market sermon. His sleeves were patched with the same cloth as yours, his feet bare like yours. He smelled of wood ash and goat milk and shame. The day it happened was colder than most. Toma came late to the square. His coat was thin, wet at the hem. He stood near the bread line, head low, fingers twitching against his stomach. A child in front of him started crying, pointing at the red on Toma's hands. The child's mother pulled him away with a force that left the air shaking. The priest was called. He didn't touch Toma, just looked, then nodded once. That was all. By dusk, Toma's things were on the edge of the woods: a sack, a broken cup, a blanket stiff with frost. No goodbyes, no prayer, no mention of where he would go or how long he had. You remember standing behind the blacksmith's fence, watching as he turned to leave. He didn't look at anyone. He didn't cry. He just walked, slow, steady. And no one followed. No one stopped him. Not even you. You wanted to. You almost did. But then you scratched your own wrist, caught the sharp sting of a half-healed wound, and stayed silent. That night, no one spoke his name. The next morning, the space where he used to stand in line was just empty, like he'd been edited out, erased. You dreamt of him for weeks. In the dreams, he's not walking. He's sitting by a stream, sleeves, rolled up hands, still red but clean. His face is turned toward the light. He doesn't speak, just looks at you, not with anger, not even sadness. Just something too quiet to name. You wonder sometimes what became of him. Did the forest take him? Did the lice? Or did someone somewhere let him stay, give him oil? A soft cloth, a bed that didn't move. You don't know, but ever since he left, people scratch more carefully. They whisper their pain now. They press herbs into their skin when no one's looking. They hide the red, because now there's proof if the village wants you gone badly enough, they'll make room for your absence. Even if it means forgetting you, especially if it means forgetting you. You sit alone behind the hut now, wrapped in a scarf that isn't yours, your wrists wrapped tight, your skin quiet for now, and you wonder how close were you to being sent away. Would anyone have stopped you? Would anyone have called your name? You never say it aloud. But deep inside, beneath the itching and the cloth and the prayers you've stopped praying, you still remember his name. Toma. And you hope wherever he is, someone else remembered too. You don't go to him. He comes to you. It's after Mass. Most people have left their footsteps, leaving muddy ghosts on the stone floor. You stay behind, sitting on the low bench near the side wall, where the shadows fall thickest. You try not to scratch. You fail. He notices. Of course he does. The priest is older than you remember. His voice is soft, but not kind. It has the weight of too many winters and not enough miracles. He stands over you for a moment without speaking, just watching, measuring. Then quietly he says, they say it starts in the blood. Sin seeps out through the skin. You don't answer. He sits. You smell incense on his robes, wax, smoke, the faint sweetness of dried apples from last season's offering. His fingers move into a pouch at his side. From it he pulls a strip of red wool, frayed at the ends, tied in a knot. A charm, he says, blessed in the old tongue. He takes your wrist without asking. Your skin flinches under his touch. Not from pain, not quite, from memory. He wraps the charm twice, tight but not cruel. He knots it slowly, muttering words you don't understand. You catch bits: purify, cleanse, protect. Words that sound more like orders than prayers. When he finishes, he presses his hand over the knot. Sleep with it, facing east, he tells you. And don't speak to the mirror after sunset. You want to ask why. But you don't, because asking makes it real. You nod instead. He stands. Don't let them see you scratch, he says, before turning away. Or they'll start asking who else you touched. Then he's gone. The knot on your wrist feels heavier than it should. That night, you lie in bed facing east. You don't know why east matters. You only know that it's coldest that way. The wind slides in through the cracks near your feet, and the moonlight hits your eyes before sleep ever finds them. You press your wrist to your chest, feeling the rough wool of the charm against your skin. You whisper to it, "Work, Please work. But deep down, you know it won't. Still, when the itch comes, as it always does, you hesitate. Just long enough to remember his hand, the knot, the warning. You scratch anyway. Gently, quietly. The charm doesn't burn. It doesn't glow. It doesn't scream. It just lies there. Like every other promise that never kept you safe. In the morning, the red mark is still there. The lice, if anything, are more active. But you keep the charm on. Not because you believe in it, but because you need something to believe in. Even if it's only a knot. Even if it's only wool. Even if it's only you. It was just a moment. 1 second. A slip. You didn't mean to. You were trying so hard not to. The chapel was full. Packed tighter than usual. Rain had pushed everyone indoors, and the benches creaked under damp cloaks and cold elbows. You sat near the end of the third row between your aunt and the boy with the hollow eyes. Your wrists burned. The charm was still there, tight against your skin. It hadn't helped. Not really. If anything, the wool only made the itching worse, the way it rubbed, the way it chafed, when you bent your hands in prayer. The priest's voice echoed through the stone. He was reading from the old book, the part about suffering, the part where the sick were told to wait, to endure, to offer up their pain like coins at a forgotten altar. You tried. You pressed your palms together, closed your eyes. You breathed in the smell of smoke, wet wool and old stone, and then it hit. The spot behind your ear. Not sharp, not sudden, just enough. A light tickle, like a feather dragged by wind, like breath. Your hand moved before your mind could stop it. 3 fingers, up, behind the ear, a soft scratch. 1, 2, silence. Then the cough. Someone shifted in the pew behind you. You opened your eyes. The boy beside you was staring. Not at your face, at your hand. Still raised, still guilty. You pulled it down, tucked it into your lap. Too late. The whisper came next. You didn't catch the words, just the shape of them, the way they curled around your name like thorns. You kept your eyes on the floor. The priest kept reading. But everything felt louder now. Every page turned, every echo, every breath, not your own. You didn't scratch again. Not during the rest of the service. Not on the walk home. Not even when the charm slipped loose and rubbed raw against the sore on your wrist. But you felt it. The burn. The shame. The watching. That night, your aunt said nothing. She ladled stew into your bowl and didn't look at you. Your cousin sat further away than usual. Your sister pressed her lips together like she wanted to speak but didn't. You ate in silence. You felt the itch rise like smoke under your skin. You didn't move. You waited. You endured, because one scratch, just one, and everyone saw. You wonder how long they'd been waiting for it. They didn't say your name. Not at first. They just said someone scratched in church. Said they saw red marks. Said they could smell something wrong, something sour under the candle wax and rain. The first time you heard it was by the well. 2 women, heads close buckets, resting on the stone rim. One said it's always the quiet ones. The other didn't respond, just tapped her sleeve, then pointed vaguely toward the chapel. They never looked at you, but you felt it. Like a cold wind passing through you, instead of around you. That afternoon, the baker's daughter didn't pass you the bread. She laid it on the edge of the counter, on a cloth. Her smile was there, but it didn't reach her eyes. You reached for the loaf with both hands, making sure your sleeves were down. She waited until you left before touching the coin. The charm on your wrist felt heavier that day. Not holier, just heavier. When you got home, you tried to speak, tried to ask your aunt if she'd heard anything, but her hands were busy kneading dough, and her eyes stayed low. I don't listen to gossip, she said, but her tone said I already know. Your cousin, who used to sit close by the fire, now picks the far corner of the room. She tucks her skirts in carefully, as if they might touch yours by accident. She no longer asks to borrow your comb. You notice other things too. The midwife doesn't smile when she passes you on the road. The boys stop playing when you get too close. The dogs bark longer at your steps. You scratch less now. Not because the itch is gone, but because the fear is stronger. Every movement is a risk. Every flinch is a word added to the story they're building around you. They never say your name, but you're the only one wearing red thread on both wrists. You try washing more often, scrubbing until your skin stings. You press ash and salt into the wounds. You sit outside in the cold hoping the frost might drive the crawling out. It doesn't. And now you're coughing. Not hard, not loud. Just enough for people to turn their heads when you pass. You hear the whispers behind doors now, through shutters, over fences. Her skin looks bad. I heard she doesn't sleep. Did you see her neck? It's like being followed by shadows that talk. You stop going to market. You stop going to the chapel. You stop speaking unless spoken to. Even the lice seem quieter now, as if they too know it's better not to draw attention. One evening, your sister leaves half a bowl of soup by your bed. She doesn't say why. She doesn't stay long. But when she walks away, she tucks something beneath the blanket, a dried sprig of lavender wrapped in string. You hold it all night, not because it helps, but because it smells like before the whispers, before the wool charms. Before you became a name, they no longer speak. You wake slowly. Your eyes are sticky, your mouth dry. The air feels like it's been borrowed from someone else's lungs, thin, stale, slightly sour. Morning hasn't arrived fully. Just a sliver of light leaks through the cracks in the wall. You try not to move. You've learned that stillness buys a few seconds of peace. But your skin hums. That same low vibration, the itch, the ache. A throb near your elbow, a sting along your side. You blink again, adjust to the faint light. And then you see it, a smear. Dark, rust red, across the cloth that covers your straw bed, near where your arm lay. It isn't fresh, but it's new. Your breath catches. You sit up slowly, lifting your sleeve. There it is, a line of torn skin, not deep, not gaping, but angry, edged with dried blood and dirt from the blanket. You press your thumb against it. It stings, of course, but you're used to that now. You don't remember doing it. Maybe in your sleep. Maybe half awake, mid-dream, when the crawling became unbearable. Maybe it wasn't even scratching, just rubbing over and over, hoping friction would become erasure. But it didn't. It never does. You glance around. Your sister is still sleeping. Your cousin, too. The baby in the corner whimpers softly, caught between sleep and hunger. No one has seen it yet. You pull your sleeve back down. You stare at the stain on the cloth. It's not big, but it's enough. You know what blood means. Blood is proof of weakness, of failure, of something that might spread. You untuck the blanket, fold it in on itself, turn the stain inward. You'll wash it later. Or maybe bury it under the straw and pretend it was never there. You look at your hands. Nails dull and dark, the skin around them raw. You try to remember the last time they looked like hands, not weapons. You fail. At the hearth, someone stirs. You stand quickly, brush down your tunic walk to the basin of water. You wash without soap. The cold bites your fingers. You press them into the wound just to feel something sharper. When your aunt appears, you're already drying your hands. She doesn't ask about your wrists. You don't offer. The rest of the day passes in silence. The bread rises. The goat kicks at the post. Rain begins just after midday and doesn't stop. By night you're exhausted, but not from work. From pretending. You lie down again. On new straw, new cloth. But the blood still lingers, not on the blanket. On your mind, you close your eyes. The itching comes. It always does. You press your hands under your back. This time, you don't scratch. Even when the wound pulses, even when it calls for you, you hold still, because now the war is visible. And you're running out of places to hide. You see her at the edge of the market. She's sitting near the wall beside the sack of wilted cabbages no one will buy. Her cloak is patched and stiff with old rain. Her hands are wrapped in linen, but the cloth is frayed, spotted with something that might be old blood, or oil, or both. She doesn't speak. Just watches. Her eyes are wide, not frightened, just open, like she's already seen everything there is to see. And she has no eyebrows. At first, you think maybe it's the light. Maybe they're just thin. Maybe she shaved them. But no, there's nothing there. Just smooth skin where hair should be. Not even stubble. Her forehead is pocked with tiny scars, little craters like a moon you don't want to look at too long. Her scalp is patchy too. Some hair left, but not much. And what remains clings to her head like dry grass to mud. You can't stop staring. You try, but you can't. Because something in you recognizes her, not her face, not her name. Her story. You see it in the way she shifts her weight carefully, as if her skin might tear if she moves too quickly. The way she keeps her fingers slightly curled, not from pain but from memory. You remember hearing her name once, long ago. When you were smaller, cleaner, back when you still believed the itch would pass. Your mother called her that poor thing. Your aunt called her cursed. The priest never said her name at all. They say she once had beautiful hair. They say she used to sing. They say she used to live with her sister near the mill. No one says what happened, but you know. You don't need them to say it. It's written all over her, not in wounds, but in what's missing. The eyebrows, the softness. The presence. She sits like someone who's been asked to leave so many times she forgot how to stand. When she looks at you, it's not unkind, just tired. You lower your gaze. You walk past her, quickly, clutching the bundle of roots in your arms. But later at home, you can't stop thinking about her. You sit by the hearth fingers, tracing the edge of your wrist, remembering the way her hands curled, remembering the silence around her, remembering how everyone pretended she wasn't there. You wonder how long did it take for the itching to reach her face. Did she try garlic? Did she try charms? Did she try not scratching, even when her skin begged? Did she win for a while? And when she lost, did anyone hold her? You lie awake that night, not from pain, but from fear, because now you have a face for the future. And it's hers, a face without hair. A body that no longer belongs in the center of the room. A story no one wants to tell. You reach up, touch your eyebrow. Just to check. Still there? For now, she doesn't knock. Midwives don't have to. She walks in like someone summoned even if no one called for her out loud. Her basket creaks. Her boots leave specks of dry mud on the floor. She doesn't smile. She never does. You sit where they told you to, by the hearth sleeves rolled to the elbow, palms up. The light is soft this time of morning, not bright enough to flatter, not dim enough to hide. She kneels across from you without a word, and sets the basket down between your knees. The smell hits first, Herb's old cloth wool, soaked in vinegar. Then she takes your hand. Rough fingers, cold. She presses the wrist, turns. It inspects the skin like it's bread dough, about to rise something to be judged, not pitied. Her thumb traces the ridges, the red, the places you tried to cover with soot. She doesn't flinch. But her eyes narrow. "Let me see both," she says. You hold out the other wrist. She mutters something under her breath, not a curse, not a prayer, just breath shaped into knowing. Then she does the thing that makes your stomach turn. She checks your nails. one by one. Lifts each fingertip gently and peers beneath. The skin is dark there, streaked with blood too old to be fresh, and too fresh to be forgotten. She doesn't ask how it got there. She already knows. Then she leans closer. You expect her to scold, to warn, to repeat what the priest said or what the whispers say. But instead she sighs. Still early, she murmurs. Your breath catches. Still early. Not bad yet, she adds, but nearly. You want to ask nearly what, but the words don't come. Your mouth is dry, your throat full of lint. She stands bones, cracking gently, and pulls something from her basket, a jar. Small, wrapped in wool. She sets it in your hand like it's made of bone. Lard and ash, she says. Twice a day, no scratching. You nod. Because what else is there to do? Eat better, she adds. You almost laugh, but you don't. She looks at you one more time, not harshly, but with the weight of someone who's seen too many wrists, too many nails, too many stories written in skin. I've seen worse, she says. You nod again, but she doesn't leave right away. She hesitates by the door. Tell me, she says, voice low, does it itch more when you're alone? You blink. She nods, like that was the answer. Then she leaves. The jar is warm in your hand, though it shouldn't be. You sit there for a while, unmoving. Uncertain. Still early, she said. But early for what? For healing? Or for losing everything? You rub a little of the salve into your wrist. It smells like soot and old promises. It stings. You keep rubbing anyway. And for a moment, just a moment, the skin quiets. Not gone. Not healed. Just quieter. And that is something. You notice it in the mirror. Not a real mirror, those are for noble homes and chapels. Yours is a sheet of metal, hammered thin and dulled by time. It hangs near the door mostly for checking dirt, not for looking at yourself. But this morning, something feels wrong. You lean closer, and there it is. Just under your left eye, a patch, red, shiny, angry. The skin puffs slightly edged with silver flakes. When you blink, it tightens. When you squint, it stings. You touch it. Bad idea. It burns, and then itches, and then pulses like a second heartbeat you never asked for. You step back. Try to breathe. Try to tell yourself it's just the cold, just dryness, just the wind from last night. But it isn't. You know the pattern by now. You've seen it on your wrists, on your elbows, at the base of your spine. And now, your face. You wrap a scarf around your head before stepping outside. Not for warmth, for hiding. The cloth is rough against your skin, but better that than the stairs. You tug it low, almost to your cheeks. It's market day. You only need to fetch salt. But even in those few minutes between home and stall, you feel it their eyes. The slight pause when someone recognizes your walk, your frame, but not your face. The second glance when they see the cloth. The whisper when you pass. You don't meet anyone's gaze. You keep your hands at your sides, even when your cheek begins to twitch. Even when the skin under the scarf starts to crawl like it's trying to peel away. You pay with exact coins. You don't speak. You nod, once. Then turn back home before the itch wins. Inside, the light is different, more honest. It shows everything. You peel the scarf off slowly, like unraveling a bandage. You stare into the metal sheet again. It's worse now. The patch is redder, more swollen. You think you see a tiny scratch, a crescent from your nail in the night. You don't remember doing it, but it's there. The jar from the midwife sits by the hearth. You hesitate. Is it safe near the eyes? You don't know. You dip your finger in anyway. The lard is solid today. The cold has thickened it. You warm it with your breath, then press gently under your eye. It stings more than it should. You hold still. The oil leaves a sheen. It smells faintly of burned wood. You sit there for a long time, scarf in your lap hand, hovering near your face, unsure if you should cover it again, or let the air see you. When your cousin walks in, she freezes. Just a moment. Just a flicker. Then she moves past. You says, nothing begins stirring the fire. But you saw it. The look, not fear. Worse, recognition. You eat dinner with your head down. You pretend the steam from the stew is why your eyes are red. You excuse yourself early. That night, you lie facing the wall. You don't bother with the scarf in bed. The straw is rough. You can feel it stick to your cheek. The itching comes slowly, like a memory instead of a sensation. Familiar, tired. You try not to touch it. But your hand moves anyway. You wake sometime before dawn, fingers damp. Your face is raw. The metal mirror catches the moonlight just enough to show you the patch has opened. Not bleeding, just exposed. The skin is no longer skin, just surface. Just a place for them to live. And for the first time, you cry. Not loudly, not long. Just enough. Because they can say what they want. They can whisper, can move away, can speak charms and wear herbs and pretend it's not their problem. But they all know the truth now. It's on your face. The goat snores. Not loudly, not like your uncle. Just a soft, rhythmic hum, the kind of sound that fills silence without disturbing it. You lie there, eyes open, cheek pressed against the straw, and listen. One breath in, one snort out. She shifts in her corner, fluffs her legs under her belly, settles again, still breathing. Still sleeping, still untouched. You envy her. You envy a goat. Her fur is matted, her hooves are cracked, her ear twitches sometimes. But she sleeps, deeply, honestly, without the sudden jerks, without the scratching. You haven't done that in weeks. The itching comes before sleep now. Always. It waits until you lie still. Until you think maybe, just maybe tonight will be different. Then it slides in under the skin, through the ribs, behind the eyes. You shift your legs. The back of your knee stings. You scratch, quickly, then regret it. The goat sighs. You close your eyes. Try to match her rhythm. Breathe with her. Let your chest rise and fall in time with that quiet animal trust. But your body doesn't listen. It's too loud inside. Your hands twitch. Your scalp pulses. You rub your fingers together, looking for friction for anything that feels like control. The goat yawns. You remember when she was born. Small, wet, useless. You fed her with a cloth and milk you could barely spare. She cried all night, then slept, curled under your blanket, for warmth. And now she sleeps alone, while you older, wiser, supposedly human, lie awake scratching. You watch her belly rise and fall. You wonder, do lice live in goats? Probably, but she doesn't seem to mind. Or maybe she doesn't know. You shift again. The straw crinkles. The sound makes your cousin stir. She rolls over, sighs, but doesn't wake. You freeze, breath caught in your throat. You feel like an intruder. Not in the house. In your own skin. The itch is constant now. Not sharp, just there. Like a hum under the surface. Like the sound the goat makes, but crueler. You sit up. The goat opens one eye, looks at you, doesn't move. You whisper, do you want to trade places? She blinks slowly, then goes back to sleep. You smile barely, then stop. Because smiling stretches your cheek, and your cheek is raw again. You walk outside, quietly. The air is cold, damp. It smells like wood and moss and frost. You sit on the step knees to chest and breathe. You don't scratch. You want to, but you don't. The sky is dark. No stars tonight. Just the kind of cloud that eats light and memory. You wonder what the goat is dreaming about. Hey, son. A world without people. You touch your wrist. The charm is still there, faded now, stiff. You think about cutting it off. Then don't. You go back inside. Lie down again. The goat doesn't wake. You envy her more than you've ever envied anyone. And somehow, that hurts more than the itching. Because you don't want gold. You don't want praise. You just want sleep, the kind the goat has. Deep, unworried. Still, you start thinking of them differently. Not as pests, as citizens. A nation, built not with bricks, but with strands of your own hair. You lie awake one night, too tired to scratch, too sore to cry, and you begin to picture them not crawling, but building. Little cities, streets made from scalp flakes, markets in the folds behind your ears, tunnels carved through the valleys where your neck meets shoulder. You imagine their language, a whisper of legs and signals, a choreography of hunger. No kings, no laws, just movement, just survival. You wonder if they argue, if they mourn, if they know you're trying to kill them, or if they simply think this is home. You shift in bed. The itching flares again, but you don't move. Instead, you picture a gathering, thousands of them holding council on the top of your skull. They disagree perhaps about whether to expand to your eyebrow. One faction votes yes, the others protest. A skirmish breaks out near your temple. You almost laugh, but it hurts to laugh now. The skin at the corners of your mouth is stretched thin, cracked from cold, from ointments, from biting down during the worst nights. You close your eyes. You imagine the queen. If they had one. Would she sit on a flake of dead skin, holding court near your crown? Would she lay eggs like decrees? Would she name your pain sacred? You shake the thought, but it comes back. In the morning, while washing your hair with snowmelt, you picture their panic. A flood, a national emergency, whole neighborhoods drowning. You tilt your head and feel the cold run down your spine like retreating soldiers. Later, while picking through your shirt, you find one not moving, stuck between seams. You place it on a stone outside, not to examine it, to bury it. You whisper rest. Then you walk away. No one taught you this kind of grief. Not for something small, not for something that hurts you. But it's there. Because for all the stories you've heard of kings of thrones, of wars waged for power, no one talks about the wars that happen quietly, beneath the skin, beneath the hair, in places no one sees unless they're looking for disgust. You lie down that night and imagine a ceasefire. You tell them, I won't fight you tonight if you let me sleep. They don't answer. Of course not. They're not real, and yet they never needed to be kings, because they already rule. There was a time when you kept track. The first one behind your wrist, you named it, Little Red. You checked it every morning, dabbed it with oil, whispered to it like it was a wound with manners. Then came another, on your shoulder, then one beneath your ear. They spread like stars, constellations across your body. You gave up trying to draw the map. At first, you counted. 7, then 12, then 17. You made up little rules. If I get through the day without adding one, I win. If I go to sleep without bleeding, I get bread tomorrow. Games, really. Little comforts for a war without prizes. But games don't last forever. Not when the numbers keep climbing. Not when the pain stops being surprising. Now, you don't count anymore. You just feel them. Raised, dry, sometimes sticky, sometimes warm. They bloom beneath your fingers like badges, not earned, inherited. You try not to touch them, but sometimes your hands forget. And in the night, when sleep slips just far enough, you wake to the quiet sound of skin against skin, scraping, soothing, betraying. This morning you found one on your thigh, bigger than the others, angry, leaking a little. You didn't react. You just pulled your clothes on, slowly the fabric catching slightly on the edge. You didn't flinch. You didn't speak. You didn't look at it again. It's not that you don't care. You're just full. There's only so much noticing a person can do before it becomes unbearable. So you stop noticing. You stop measuring. You stop recording which spot cracked in the cold and which one bled after you bumped into the doorframe. Your body becomes something else, not a place to live, just a record of having lived. At dinner, your aunt asks if your appetite's improving. You nod. You chew. But you don't taste. The skin at the corners of your mouth is split. Salt stings it. You eat anyway. Afterward, you go outside to air the blanket. It's stiff now. From blood? Maybe. From the oil? Maybe. From time always. You shake it out careful, not to let the wind lift it too far. You don't want the neighbors to see what soaks through the cloth. You hang it on the line. It sags, just like you. A few lice crawl free in the sun. You don't kill them. You just watch. When your sister asks how many you have now, how many cuts, how many scabs, you shrug. I stopped counting, you say. She nods like she understands. Then she rolls down her sleeve. You don't ask what she's hiding. You already know. It came in the night. First as mist, then as a whisper on the roof, then as a steady rhythm, not angry, not loud, just constant. The kind of rain that stays for hours without asking permission. You lay awake listening. You hadn't slept anyway. The itch was already there, under your ribs, behind your knees, along the raw edge of your jaw. You had tried not to scratch. You had failed. So when the rain came, you saw it as a sign. You rose before anyone else. Pulled on your thinnest shift, barefoot, quiet. Outside, the world was soaked. The earth gave slightly beneath your feet, not mud yet, but not dry either. The air clung to your skin, cold, clean. You stepped into it like a prayer. Like it might see you, save you, forgive you. You stood in the open yard, arms limp at your sides, and let it fall. On your scalp, your shoulders, your back, down your spine. It didn't sting, not at first. It felt like quiet. You tilted your face upward, let the water trace the curve of your nose, your lips, your neck. The lice would drown you, thought. The scabs would soften. The skin would reset. You whispered, "Let me be clean." You didn't know who you were speaking to. Rain, maybe. Time. God. You stayed until your shift clung to you like a second skin. Until your hair dripped into your eyes, until your fingers turned red from cold. You went back inside, dripping. No one was awake. You stood by the hearth, wrapped in a blanket, shivering quietly, not from fever, from the flicker of something dangerous. Hope. You waited for the crawling to stop. Waited for the sting to fade, waited for the skin to feel like skin again. It didn't. An hour passed. Then two. By midday, the itching returned. Familiar. Persistent. Unbothered. You scratched once, then again. The spot behind your ear wept when you pressed it. You sat by the wall and bit your thumb. The rain hadn't helped. It had only made the blanket wetter, the straw clumpier, the scabs softer, easier to tear. You looked down at your hands. They were clean. But they were still yours, and the things living under your skin had survived the storm. You closed your eyes and let the blanket fall. Not in anger, just in surrender. It wasn't a healer. It wasn't your mother. It wasn't the priest or the midwife or even your sister. It was the boy who carried firewood. He's not much older than you, or maybe younger. You've never spoken more than 5 words to him at a time. Just nods, quiet thanks, awkward glances over cracked buckets or shared soup. But today, he saw you drop the bundle. Not a big one, just some rags from the line. The wind caught it, and your wrist flared sharp and sudden. You winced, bent too fast, lost your grip. You were already tired, already raw. So when the cloth fell, and you paused a moment too long to pick it up, he stepped forward and said quietly, Are you okay? Not demanding, not suspicious, not spoken with pity or disgust, just asked. And for a moment, the whole world paused, because no one had asked you that in weeks. Not since the itching started, not since the whispers grew louder than the bells. You didn't know how to answer. You wanted to nod. You wanted to say yes, but your throat caught. Because the truth was, no, you weren't okay. Your body wasn't quiet. Your sleep wasn't whole. Your skin wasn't yours. But somehow, in that moment, it didn't matter. Because he asked, and not with eyes full of judgment, just curiosity. Gentleness. You shook your head, just once. And he nodded like that was the right answer. He didn't try to fix anything. He just picked up the fallen cloth, handed it back. Didn't flinch when his fingers brushed yours, and then he walked away. No sermon, no charm. Just presence. The bundle felt heavier in your hands than it had before. You held it against your chest and stood still for a long time. Later that night, when the itching returned, and of course it did, you didn't scratch right away. You sat with it. Let it hum beneath the skin. You whispered, "No, I'm not okay." But you also whispered, "Someone saw me." And somehow, that helped more than garlic ever did. You didn't get better. Not really. Not in the way stories like to end, with healing, with light, with a clean face and a stronger heart. The scabs didn't vanish. The lice didn't bow in defeat. No one declared you pure. There was no miracle. But you're still here. You wake. You breathe. You tie your sleeves a little tighter in the morning, not to hide, just to stay warm. You wash with water that still bites your skin, but now you hum while doing it. Not a song, just sound. Something to fill the space between the silence and the scratching. Some nights you still scratch. Of course you do. The war never really ends. It just grows quiet enough to sleep through. But you sleep now. Not always, not deeply. But enough. Your sister places lavender by your bed without a word. Your aunt leaves bread a little closer to your corner. Even the priest, when he passes you on the path, no longer avoids your gaze. He doesn't smile, but he nods. It's something. You wear the charm still, though the thread is faded, the knot loose. You could cut it off, but you don't. Because it reminds you, not of sickness, not of shame, but of surviving. Of the days you thought you'd vanish piece by piece, wound by wound, and didn't. Your body still hurts sometimes. Your skin still marks easily. You don't let the little ones share your blanket anymore, not out of fear, but protection. You've learned what you can pass on without meaning to, and still. You laugh. Some days. You watch the goat yawn in the sun. You feel the wind on your cheek and don't flinch. You catch your reflection in the basin, and for once, don't look away. You don't count scabs. But you count mornings. And today, the count is one higher. Because you're still here, and maybe that's all survival really is. Not winning, not healing. Just staying, just breathing. Just waking up one more time than the day before, and letting your skin remember softly that it once belonged to something tender. It had been weeks, or maybe months. Time lost its shape when your days stopped changing. But on this morning, you woke late. Not from pain, not from itching, just sleep, long uninterrupted, dreamless. You sat up slowly, half expecting the sting in your elbow, the twitch in your neck, the need to move your fingers against your wrist. But it didn't come right away. You waited for it. Still nothing. So you stood. You walked across the room, and the straw didn't stick to your legs. You washed your face and didn't wince. You peeled off your sleeve and found only one scab, faded, flat, more memory than wound. At first you were afraid. What if it was only hiding? What if it came back worse? What if the silence was a trick? But then, something else. The feeling you hadn't dared think about. Not hope, not pride. Just pause. You stepped outside, and the air didn't bite. You passed the baker, and she didn't look away. You stood in line for milk, and no one moved back. No one asked if you were better. No one asked anything, and somehow that stung more. Because you had suffered out loud, but healed in silence. You had been named in whispers, but now forgotten. No scar, no smile, no welcome back. Just normal. And you realized the world doesn't wait for your healing. It only waits for your disappearance or your quiet return. You exhaled, deep. Then lifted the hem of your sleeve, rubbed the wrist gently, and walked on. It didn't leave like a storm. There was no final night of burning, no last eruption, no wound to mark the end. It just stopped coming. Not all at once, but little by little. One day your wrist didn't tingle before sleep. Another day your scalp stayed quiet even as the fire crackled dryly beside your bed. You noticed, but only in passing, as if it were a bird that used to sing outside your window and had simply moved on. You didn't tell anyone. Part of you was afraid it might come back if you named it, so you stayed silent. You still scratch sometimes, out of habit, not need. A flick of the fingers, here a tug of the sleeve there. But there was no pain, no heat, no blood. You didn't celebrate. No one threw open the shutters to declare you healed. There was no feast, no song. The priest didn't nod any slower or bless you any longer. In fact, no one noticed. Because the world only listens to wounds when they're loud, and you had become quiet. Even the goat had forgotten. She headbutted your knee that morning, waiting for feed. You bent down to stroke her neck the first time you'd touched another creature without thinking of what might pass between your skins. You didn't flinch. And still, you waited for the itch to return. For the crawling to remind you it was still somewhere beneath sleeping. But it didn't come. Not that day, not the next. You should have said goodbye. You should have stood in the yard, lifted your arms, whispered, "I release you." You should have burned the charm, buried the blanket, washed your hands in the last snow, and watched the ghost of yourself drift away in steam. But you didn't. Because you weren't sure it was over. Because when something lives with you that long, its absence is too quiet to trust. So you carried it anyway, the memory. The rhythm of the scratching, the hush in the chapel after you moved your hand. The boy who asked, the nun's oil. The blood on the blanket, the woman with no eyebrows. You never said goodbye. You just lived one day longer than the itch did. And you've been living ever since. It happened weeks later. Maybe months. You were talking to the boy again, the one who once asked if you were okay. He was telling you about a chicken that refused to lay eggs unless sung to. You laughed. It hurt a little to do so, but you laughed anyway. And then your fingers moved, before you could stop them. Before your mind could catch the memory, they reached up, gentle, thoughtless, and scratched the back of your neck. Just once, just enough. The air shifted. He paused. You paused. And everything you thought you'd left behind returned. In that single second, the chapel, the whispers, the burning, the night you stood in the rain, thinking you could wash your skin back into silence. Your heart stuttered. Your hand dropped. You whispered habit. He nodded. But the moment hung there, quiet and sharp like the scent of smoke hours after the fire's out. You wanted to explain. To say it's nothing now. To say I'm healed. To say it's just muscle memory. But instead you said nothing. Because the truth is you weren't sure. The skin was clean, the scalp calm, but something beneath had stirred. Not the infestation, the fear. The knowing, the part of you that learned to read every twitch like a warning. That night, you didn't scratch, but you didn't sleep easily either. You lay there, hands flat, eyes open, breath slow, listening to a war that wasn't happening anymore, just in case it returned. It didn't, but the silence had changed. You realized something. Even when your body forgets, part of you will always remember. And maybe that's the price. Maybe healing isn't forgetting what hurt you. Maybe healing is living with the shape of the ghost it left behind and choosing not to call it back. You woke the next morning and didn't check the spot. You just got up, fed the goat, folded the blanket, spoke to the boy again, and never scratched your neck in front of him again. There was a time when you couldn't imagine a moment without it. The itch was everywhere, in your wrists, behind your ears, beneath your ribs. It sat with you at supper, followed you to the chapel, slept beside you, breathing heavier than anyone else in the room. You thought it had claimed you, that you'd grow around it like ivy around rot, still green on the outside, but soft and hollow underneath. You believed you'd always think about it. Even after the wounds closed, even after the scabs faded, even after the lice moved on to someone else. But seasons shift. And you didn't notice when it happened. Not exactly. It was gradual. One day you fed the goat and didn't rub your elbow afterward. One evening you washed your neck and didn't check the basin for flakes of skin. One morning you woke up and didn't think of it first. You were thinking about bread, or clouds, or the way your sister's laugh had changed. You were thinking about life, not war. You smiled at that realization, soft and slow, as if testing the shape of your mouth again. And then you felt guilty, not for healing, but for forgetting, because part of you still remembered how it felt to be unclean, unwanted, touched only by linen or by oil or by fingers too afraid to press fully into your skin. You sat quietly that evening, hands folded, and whispered, "I don't miss it. But I remember." You lit a candle. Not for thanks, not for ceremony, just for memory. A flicker to honor the part of you that thought it would never escape. You stared at the flame. It didn't dance. It just burned, like you once did. But gently now, soft, steady, almost beautiful. Your skin doesn't burn anymore, not like before. But sometimes, when the light hits your forearm just right, you still flinch. Not from pain. From memory. There's no mark there now. Just skin, pale, ordinary. But your hand hesitates before brushing it. You prepare yourself for a sting that never comes. And then you laugh quietly without humor, because somehow, even healing has its habits. Your body remembers differently now. Not in scars. In pauses. You reach to tie your hair and your fingers stall behind your neck. You feel an itch on your leg and your breath catches, not because it's real, but because your mind still follows old paths. You run your hand over clean sheets and think too clean, as if absence were a warning. It's been months. The oil jar has dried. The charm on your wrist is gone unraveled one morning when you weren't looking. And still, your shoulder tightens when someone stands too close. You've stopped scratching, but not anticipating. That's the thing no one tells you about survival. It doesn't end with the silence of symptoms. It ends when your body stops preparing for war. And that takes longer. You fold your laundry slower now. You check seams. You still sniff your scarf before wearing it. You still braid your hair in the old pattern that one meant to hide patches, even though there are no more patches. Even though the lice are long gone, you think maybe they left something behind anyway. Not in your skin, but in your nervousness. In your breath, in the way your hands still curl into fists in sleep. You try not to resent it. Your body did its best. It kept you here, It held you together, even when your mind wandered far from home. So when the twitch comes, that phantom itch behind the ear, that ghost tingle on your spine, you don't fight it. You breathe. You smile gently. You say not today, and your skin listens. They don't mention it now. Not the itching, not the blood, not the blankets that moved on their own. Not the boy who left, not the woman with no eyebrows. Not even the way you sat at the edge of the room for weeks, fingers clenched under cloth eyes, always watching your own wrists. They act like it never happened. Like the season passed and only the cold mattered. The priest talks of rain now. The midwife complains about potatoes that won't sprout. Your sister sings while sweeping, and when you pause, she doesn't stop. It's as if silence became the cure. Not oil, not ash, just silence. At first, you were grateful. You thought maybe it's over. Maybe if no one speaks of it, it won't return. But then one day you saw a girl on the road, young, maybe 10, scratching her forearm slowly. Not hard, not panicked, just beginning. You said nothing. You watched. She looked at you, once eyes wide, like she wasn't sure whether to be afraid. And you realized something. No one had warned her. No one whispered in her ear, tie your sleeves tighter. No one said, don't share your scarf. No one told her what garlic stings or which herb to boil when it's behind the ears, because no one talks about it anymore. Because they're afraid words will bring it back. You remember feeling like that too. You understand, but still. You wish someone had told her. You wish someone had told you. So you walk past, and you whisper, not loudly, not urgently, just enough. Try salt. Then you keep walking. She doesn't say thank you. She doesn't turn around. But you hope that later, when the itch comes stronger, when the silence feels heavier than the skin on her bones, she'll remember. And no, she wasn't the first, and she won't be the last. It's calm now. Most days, you barely think of it. You walk without wincing. You stretch without flinching. You sleep without waking yourself up mid-scratch. Your skin, for the first time in seasons, is quiet. But not empty. It remembers. There are tiny pale lines on your wrists, too faint for anyone else to notice. But you know where they are. You trace them sometimes without meaning, to like walking a path you used to follow in the dark. Sometimes in the bath, when the water is too warm, you feel a pulse in your elbow, and for a moment, you're back there, in the straw, in the rain, in the silence that wasn't silence, because it carried the sound of crawling. But it passes. Now your body holds more than fear. It holds memory. Of pain, yes. But also of endurance. It holds the way the nun's hands felt steady, not soft. The way the midwife looked at you and saw the truth without pity. The way your sister sat, just close enough to remind you she was still there. You run your hand across your shoulder. Nothing. No sting, no twitch, just warmth. But inside, you feel something hum. Not danger, just knowing. You survived something no one wants to name, and you carry that quietly. Like a story, folded in the lining of your coat, worn but never told aloud. And maybe that's all right. Maybe healing doesn't mean forgetting. Maybe it means holding space for what happened, without letting it speak first every time. Your skin is quiet, but not empty. It's yours again. And that is everything. You had chances. Moments when someone asked, was it bad? Or when a new girl whispered, did it hurt? Even when your sister, half asleep, said you were brave. But you never really answered. You just nodded, or smiled, or changed the subject to bread, or goats, or the way spring made the roof leak again. Not because you didn't want to talk, but because you didn't know how. How do you describe something that lived inside your skin, that spoke in pulses, not words, that waited until you were alone to whisper your unworthiness? How do you explain the war you fought lying down, The battle cries that sounded like scratching. The victories that looked like silence. You thought once about writing it down. Even just for yourself. You found a bit of charcoal and a strip of old linen, sat by the hearth staring at the blank fabric. You wrote the word itch, then stared at it. Too small. Too clean. You folded the cloth and tossed it back into the basket. Some nights, you imagined telling it all out loud to someone who'd listen without blinking. You'd say everything. The straw, the shame, the boy who left, the church, the charm, the moment you thought about leaving too, the rain, the scab, the night you didn't cry, but wanted to. But no one ever asked the whole question. So you never gave the whole answer. Instead, you told pieces. To the goat, to the sky, to the skin that healed over without asking your permission. And those pieces live inside you now. Not secrets, just quiet truths. Unfinished sentences. You don't need them to be understood anymore. You just need them to stay. So you remember. And you carry them. And you let them breathe. Even if they never make it to anyone else's ears. Because you know what happened. And sometimes, that's enough. You never burned it. You thought you would. You thought there'd be a day, warm, dry, maybe at the edge of spring when you'd carry it to the fire pit pile, kindling beneath it, strike flint to stone and watch the whole thing go up in flame. You imagined standing there, arms crossed, watching the smoke rise, whispering goodbye like it mattered. But the fire never came. Or maybe you just never lit it. The blanket stayed, folded, if you can call it that, in the corner behind the barrel, near the place where no one sweeps. It's stiffer now. Dusty, edged with straw. Still smells a little like goat and oil and all the nights you didn't sleep. No one uses it. No one touches it. But no one throws it away either. It just stays. You walk past it every day. Sometimes you stop and stare at it longer than you mean to. You try to remember which patch you bled on, which side you curled into when you thought your skin might peel itself away. You don't always remember. That surprises you. You thought you'd never forget, but memory fades differently when it's safe to forget. Some nights, when the air is too still, you wonder if it's still there, not the lice, not the scabs, but the feeling, the way your breath used to sound under that blanket. The way the silence used to press on your chest like a second weight. You think about tossing it out. You do. You even pick it up once, hold it in your arms like something once loved, once feared. The edges crumble in your fingers. Something small, maybe straw, maybe lint, maybe memory, flutters to the ground. You pause, then fold it again. Place it back in the corner, not because you need it, but because part of you still honors it, not as comfort. As witness, that blanket saw you at your worst. And held you anyway. You don't owe it anything. But still, you let it stay, just a little longer. They told you it was your fault, that it came from dirt. From laziness, from something inside you that didn't try hard enough to stay pure. So you scrubbed, and prayed, and whispered apologies to skin that was already breaking. You wore the red charm. You drank the vinegar. You stood in the rain with your arms outstretched, begging the clouds to take it from you. But it stayed. And when it stayed too long, they stopped blaming you. They started erasing you instead. You became silence at the table, an empty space on the bench. A lesson no one wanted to say out loud. And through it all, you believed them. You thought, I have to be clean to be seen, to be touched, to be wanted, to be loved. But they were wrong. You know that now. Because you never needed to be clean. You only needed to be real. To hurt and still rise. To scratch and still speak. To bleed and still reach for someone's hand even if they pulled away. Your skin isn't perfect. It never was, but it carried you. It held your shame, your hope, your sleep. It burned and bled and broke. And still it stayed, just like you did. You survived not by becoming clean, but by refusing to disappear. You are not holy because you're healed. You are worthy because you endured. So tonight, when you lie down, don't tuck your sleeves in too tight. Don't press your hands into fists. Let the air touch you. Let your skin breathe. Let your breath be uneven. Your scars be visible. Your story stay yours. You made it here, and that is enough. Always was. Always will be. You didn't walk away from it with nothing. You carried things. Not lice, not scabs, not the burn of garlic or the chill of goat fat drying on your skin. Other things. Quieter things. You carried how it taught you to listen, not with your ears, but with your hands. How to tell when someone's fingers hesitated before reaching, when their sleeve tugged too quickly, when silence meant something more than peace. You carried the names no one spoke out loud. Toma, the girl at the well, the woman with no eyebrows. You carried the red thread even after it frayed. You carried the habit of washing with reverence, of treating even cracked skin like something sacred, of believing against the weight of proof that you were still allowed to be here. You carried the scent of oil, the hush of the nun's fingers. The boy who looked at you and didn't flinch. You carried your own name, even when others refused to say it. And now, when you walk, you still carry it all, not as burden. As offering, a soft, invisible bundle wrapped in memory. And when the day comes that someone else begins to itch not just on their skin, but in their sense of self, you'll know what to hand them. A cloth, a glance, a single sentence whispered like a bridge. You're not dirty, you're just surviving. You didn't mean to. It just happened. She was crying, the younger girl, the one with the pale sleeves and the bite marks on her fingers. You found her behind the shed knees to her chest, breathing too fast to speak. You knew the posture. You knew the silence. And without thinking, you sat beside her. Close. Not too close. You waited. She didn't speak, but her shoulders shook, and you saw the skin on her neck, red, raised, just beginning. You remembered what it felt like in that moment, the first signs, the fear, the knowing. And so without asking, without words, you reached out. Your hand touched hers, not as healer, not as comfort, just as presence. And she didn't flinch. You half expected her to pull away, to look at your wrist, to search your face for the marks. But she didn't. She just stayed. Your hand on hers, skin to skin. Two people, two stories, one pause between. You didn't give advice. You didn't offer charms. You just let your hand stay. And that was enough. Later that night, you sat by the fire, rubbing your thumb against your palm, remembering the softness of that moment, the way her hand had trembled, the way yours hadn't. You realized that was the first time in a long time that you reached out first, not to steady yourself, not to hide, but to give. The wound had become a bridge, not a wall. You looked at your hand. No red. No itch, just warmth. And something else, too. Something like healing, but from the inside out. No one marked the day you healed. There was no bell, no prayer, no name whispered back into the light. You just moved forward. The whispers faded, but they were never replaced by applause. The distance closed, but no one called it welcome. The scabs disappeared, but no one noticed the smooth skin that followed. And at first, you thought that meant you hadn't mattered, that because they didn't remember your pain, it hadn't existed. That because they didn't speak of what you endured, it wasn't real. But then something shifted. Quietly, you were kneading dough one morning, elbows dusted in flower sunlight crawling over the table, and you realized. No one remembered, but the bread still rose. No one said your name, but your hands still worked. No one asked you what it felt like, but your chest still filled with breath. You mattered anyway, not because they said so, not because they blessed your survival, not because they made space for your story, but because you carried it, because you woke, because you were there, and still are. You exist in the small things now. A folded cloth set gently beside someone's hand. A quiet glance toward a girl who can't stop scratching her wrist. A nod across a crowded room, just enough to say, "I see you." You don't need them to build a statue or write your name in the church book. You don't even need them to say they were wrong. You lived. That's the record. That's the memory. That's the truth. You didn't need to be remembered to matter. You were already enough, even when you were broken, even when you were bleeding, even when they turned away. You mattered. You still do. And always will. At first, survival felt like enough. Breathing, eating, not scratching until you bled, not being sent away, not being named, not being noticed. But slowly, the silence became space, and the space became something else. You found your voice again, not loud, not sure, but present. You spoke to the girl at the river. You stood in the chapel without hiding your sleeves. You said no once when someone asked for your blanket, and you didn't apologize for it. You planted something in the ground, something that wasn't meant to be eaten immediately. You let yourself plan, even just a little. You let your body be more than a shield. It surprised you. The way your arms still worked, the way your mouth still formed songs, the way you could laugh again, not out of madness, but out of warmth. You started noticing light again. How it caught in the dust near the roof. How it touched the goat's ear like a secret. How it shimmered on clean water as you poured it. You found quiet that didn't feel like exile. You started wearing color again. Not bold, just something other than gray. Something soft. You allowed your hands to rest on someone's shoulder. You didn't flinch when they rested theirs on yours. And one morning, you looked at your skin, not to check, not to worry, just to look. And you thought, I made it. But more than that, I changed. You grew, not despite what happened, but around it, through it. Like moss through stone, like roots splitting brick, like skin over a wound that no longer needs to hide. You are not just what you endured. You are what you became, and that too is worthy of being held gently. You kept waiting for the ending, for the final itch. The last scar. The morning you'd wake and feel nothing. Not fear, not flinch, not the shadow of what had once lived inside your skin. But it never came like that, because some things don't end. They shift. What once was crawling becomes memory. What once was pain becomes pause. What once was survival becomes ritual. You still wash your sleeves twice. You still avoid the old straw pile, even though no one sleeps there anymore. You still glance down at your wrists before you go to sleep, but you don't dread it. You just notice. The war didn't leave. It just grew quiet, like a drum still echoing in your chest. Not loud enough to wake you, but still there. Still steady. You've learned to live with it. Not fear it, not hate it. Just live. You teach others now, not by instruction, but by example. You let them sit close. You ask if they're okay. You offer oil before questions. You hold space. You don't talk much about what happened, not because it hurts, but because it doesn't have to explain itself anymore. It is part of you, like your breath, like your name, like the way your hands know how to braid or wash or touch without flinching. This is not the ending you imagined, but it's the one you've grown into. Not clean, not perfect, not untouched, but whole. In your way, And maybe that's all healing ever was. Not a moment, not a line crossed, just a shape that keeps shifting, and a soul that learns to move with it. You used to wonder if you'd ever be who you were before. Before the itching, before the silence, before the stares that made your skin crawl more than the lice ever did. You remembered the version of you that laughed without checking your sleeves, that walked barefoot in the field without worrying what clung to your hem, that believed skin was just skin, not something that could betray you. And for a long time you missed that person. You mourned them. You thought healing meant getting back to her. But you don't think that anymore, because now, when you catch your reflection, not in a mirror, but in water in the curve of a spoon in someone else's gaze, you don't see who you were. You see who you became. You see someone who didn't disappear. Someone who stayed, even when it burned, even when it bled, even when it felt easier to vanish. You see someone whose body remembers what silence taught, whose hands still carry the weight of oil jars, folded cloths, and unspoken prayers. You see someone who knows how to spot pain before it speaks, and how to sit beside it without needing to fix it. You are not the same, and that's not a loss. It's a growth, like bark after a wound, like kintsugi, like a song made softer because it's been sung through tears. You still wear the old rhythms sometimes, the habits, the glances, the double wash on laundry day, but they don't own you. They're just threads in the cloth now, woven into who you are. You are not the same, and that's the point. You thought it was about the itching. That was the enemy, right? The tiny legs, the red marks, the broken sleep, the shame that bloomed across your skin before you even understood why people started stepping back. But now, looking back, you see it clearly. It was never just about the itch. It was about what the itch made people see. And what it made them stop seeing. You were no longer a sister, no longer a daughter, no longer a name spoken with ease. You became the girl who scratched, the girl with the cloth, the girl they whispered about near the well, the body people looked through instead of toward. It was about loneliness, about silence, about how quickly a story can be written on someone else's skin, and how slowly it fades, even after the marks are gone. The itch was only the surface. Beneath it lived fear, exile, grief, but also, underneath that, deeper still, there was something else. You, your breath, your eyes still searching for softness, your hands still learning how to hold again, your heart somehow still intact, beating beneath every bandage and salve and charm. The body healed, yes. But the story, it stayed. Not as a burden, as a root. A place to grow from. You walk differently now. Not because you're fragile, because you carry meaning in every step. You speak differently now. Not because your voice broke. Because you know silence too well to waste words. It was never just about the itch. It was always about who you would become once the world no longer told you who you were. And now, you know, they didn't see it. Not then. Not when your skin was marked. Not when your sleeves were tight. Not when you walked with your head down and your wrists hidden like secrets. They looked at you and saw symptoms, saw shame, saw something they hoped would stay far enough away. But you were never just that. Even on the worst days, the sleepless ones, the bleeding ones, the ones where you questioned if you deserved a bed or a name or a hand to hold, even then you were more. You were breath, and hunger, and memory, and tenderness waiting for a place to land. You were stillness that noticed every kindness, even the ones too small to name. You were the ache of someone who wanted to stay even when the world asked you to vanish. They called you cursed, but they never saw the way you looked at firelight, like it might forgive you. They called you unclean, But they never saw how you washed your sister's hands before your own. They called you silent, but they never heard the stories your skin carried, even when your mouth said nothing. You were always more than the itch, more than the stains, more than the exile and the whispered prayers you never learned to believe in. And you still are, now. With clean skin, with steady sleep, with a body that no longer trembles when someone touches your arm. You are not proof that wounds heal. You are proof that people survive even when they are forgotten. You are living memory, living breath, living worth, and no one can take that from you again. Not with names, not with silence, not with fear. Because now, you were always more than what happened to you. You always will be. They might have treated it like nothing. A rash, a nuisance, a phase to be endured or shunned. They called it a private matter, a hygiene problem, a girl's shame. They rolled their eyes, closed their shutters, changed the subject. But you know better now, because you lived inside that story. You walked through every chapter, and it was never small. It was not just about scabs and scarves. It was about fear, about loneliness, about the terrifying silence that creeps in when people stop saying your name. It was about nights when your body felt like an enemy, and mornings when you dressed like you were hiding a war. It was about not being touched, not being trusted, not being looked at like you mattered. And it was about choosing again and again to stay anyway. To show up, to sit in the room. To wash your hands, fold your sleeves, eat your soup, say your name silently in your head, just to remember it still belonged to you. That's not small. That's survival. That's a story. And even if they never ask you to tell it, even if no one writes it down or turns it into legend, you know it happened. You know what it cost. And you know what it gave you, too. A kind of sight, a kind of strength, a softness that doesn't disappear when the pain does. Your story was never small, and if anyone made you feel otherwise, they were wrong. There is nothing left to prove. You've lived every part of this. The itch, the ache, the silence, the shame, the long nights and longer stares, the whispered prayers and the words that never came. You carried the scabs, the weight of cloth on raw skin, the fear that tomorrow would bring one more patch, one more look, one more step away from who you were before it all began. And still, you stayed. You stitched yourself together without ceremony. You made peace with a body that once turned against you. You found softness after the burn. You gave yourself time. You learned to breathe again, slowly, carefully, fully. You learned to laugh and not check your sleeves. You touched another person's hand and didn't flinch. And now you get to rest. Not because everything is perfect, not because your skin will never itch again, not because the world apologized, but because you're allowed. Because survival does not require tension forever, because healing is not a constant climb. Because peace, the quiet kind, the steady kind, is earned every time you choose to stay soft. You get to rest now. You get to lie down and not check your wrists. You get to dream about things that have nothing to do with pain. You get to forget, not because the story didn't matter, but because your heart has made room for other stories too. You are not running anymore. You are not hiding. You are here. Whole, gentle, present, and so, close your eyes. Let your hands go still. Let your breath be uneven and human and real. The war is quiet. The skin is calm. And you get to rest now. The noise left first. The scratching, the rustle of linen at midnight, the whispered prayers no one taught you how to finish. Then the pain left, then the fear, then the stares. But the quiet, it stayed. It curled up inside you, like something tame. Not empty, not cold, just soft. You used to be afraid of silence, afraid of what it meant, exile, forgetting loneliness. But now, the silence feels like a room with the windows open. You can breathe in it. You can rest. Sometimes you carry that silence with you, in the way you move, in the way you listen to others, in the way you touch cloth water bred gently like all of it remembers too. The silence knows your story. It doesn't need to speak it, and you don't need to explain. You walk through the world as someone who has been broken softly and stitched back together without needing a name for every thread. You walk like someone who learned how to suffer and how to stop. You walk like someone who survived something without turning hard. And the quiet, it walks beside you now, not as shadow, as peace. It could have made you harder. It almost did. There were days when the only way to get through was to narrow yourself, to shrink into silence, to let your skin grow a second skin, to stop feeling because feeling made everything burn sharper. But you didn't stay there. You didn't stay bitter. You didn't stay hidden. Instead, you learned something rarer. You learned how to stay soft, not fragile. Soft, like bread pulled from the fire, shaped by heat, but still warm inside. You began to notice when others turned away, not with anger, but understanding. You began to speak in smaller words, not out of fear, but gentleness. You began to touch with 2 fingers instead of 1, not because you doubted yourself, but because you remembered what it meant to be tender. The war didn't make you sharp. It made you quiet. It taught you how to hear someone else's breath shift before they speak. It taught you how to pause when someone says, "It itches," and not ask where, but instead ask, "Are you scared?" It taught you that survival isn't the opposite of breaking. Sometimes they walk hand in hand. You survived. And you didn't become cruel. That's what matters. You didn't come back as fire. You came back as earth steady, soft alive. You came back with arms that still open, eyes that still close, a heart that still lets in light. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. And now, when you reach out to help, to hold, to heal your hands, remember the war. But they move anyway. Gently, because the war is over. But the softness stayed, and that, more than anything else, is your strength. You always thought victory would feel like noise, like bells, like cheers, like someone placing a hand on your shoulder and saying, "You made it." But when it came, it didn't sound like anything. It was quiet, like breath you didn't know you'd been holding, like waking up and realizing you slept through the night. No blood, no final scab to mark the end, just calm. And calm didn't feel like winning at first. It felt like nothing, because you were used to the war. Used to earning every second of peace with pain. So when peace just arrived unannounced, unexplained, uncelebrated, you didn't trust it. You waited for the relapse, waited for the old twitch in your wrist, waited for someone to look at you like they used to, with distance, with fear. But nothing came. Just stillness. And then you realized that was it. That was the victory. Not the miracle, not the cure, not even the healing, the softness. The way your body stopped fighting, the way your breath grew long again, the way you could walk through a crowd and not feel like your skin carried a secret. You were never fighting the itch. You were fighting the idea that you had to become hard to survive it, and you didn't. You stayed soft, and that's the victory no one will write down. But you will never forget it, because it's written in how you move now, in how you speak, in how gently you hold the world even when it didn't hold you. You don't expect it, but you no longer fear it. Not in the way you used to, not like a shadow waiting behind your door, not like a sickness that steals your name. Now if it ever comes back, you know what to do. You'll feel the first twitch behind your ear, the soft burn along your wrist, the whisper in your scalp like old wind finding its way home. And yes, your breath might catch, but it won't break. Because now you know how to sit still, how to breathe without panic, how to gather cloth and oil without shame. You know which herbs to steep, which sleeves to wear, which hands to ask for help. But more than that, you know the truth, that this isn't a curse, not a punishment, not a mark of unworthiness. It's a chapter, and you've read it before. So you'll read it again if you have to, but this time you won't be alone. You'll know who to look for in the crowd, the quiet ones, the ones with tired fingers and gentle eyes. You'll know how to sit beside someone who hasn't yet spoken their fear aloud. You'll know how to whisper, "I know." You'll know how to carry your own pain while still holding someone else's. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but softly. And that is the difference. You don't dread the return. You don't invite it either. You just acknowledge it, like rain, like loss, like memory. If it comes back, you'll face it, with salves and silence, with breath and blankets, with the knowledge that your softness is still intact. Because this time, you are not afraid of the beginning. You are anchored by everything that came after. You used to look for it, a sign, a voice, a corner where the light stayed warm, a hand that didn't hesitate when it touched yours. You used to search for safety, in chapels, in blankets, in silence that didn't sting. And sometimes you found it, in lavender, in oil, in a boy who asked one soft question and didn't look away. But mostly, you had to make it yourself. With whatever was left, with breath that trembled, with skin that flinched, with hope too quiet to speak aloud. Now you notice someone else scratching, just once. Quickly. They try to hide it, the way you once did with a cough, a sleeve, a glance at the ground. You don't say anything right away. You just stay near. You sit beside them when no one else does. You hand them a clean cloth without comment. You don't offer advice. You offer presence. Because you remember what it felt like to have someone sit just close enough to say, "I'm not leaving." You remember that what heals first is not the skin, but the silence between two people that finally breaks. You didn't become a saint. You didn't become the cure, but you became something else. A soft place to land, a breath that doesn't rush. A story that listens before it speaks. You are the safe place now. Not for everyone, but for someone. And maybe that's exactly what you needed all along, not to be saved, but to know that when it was over, you could become what you once needed. Maybe you're still scratching. Maybe your wrists are red. Maybe your scalp still carries that quiet pulse, the one that hums when everything else goes still. Maybe you've been trying not to touch it all day or all night. Maybe this story didn't feel like a story at all. Maybe it felt like a mirror. If so, I want to tell you something first, gently. You are not alone, not in the itching, not in the hiding, not in the long pause between "I'm fine" and "actually, I'm not." Because for as long as there have been bodies, there have been burdens stitched quietly into skin. Lice and scabs and sores, yes, but also exile. Fear. Being seen in your worst moment and never again for who you really are. And somehow, you're still here. Breathing, listening, bringing yourself to this quiet hour. That matters more than anyone has ever told you. Maybe your wounds were never visible. Maybe they lived beneath language. Maybe they took the shape of a childhood you didn't get to keep. A name you were afraid to say. A body you learned to distrust. This story wasn't just about lice. It wasn't about disease or dirt or even medieval medicine. It was about what happens when the world decides someone is unclean and how that person keeps breathing anyway. It was about you. And now that the tale is told, all the nights, all the blankets, all the oil and red string, and silence, let's stay here together for a moment longer. Inhale. Let your shoulders fall a little deeper into the mattress or the pillow or the quiet between the sentences. Let yourself feel how heavy your body really is when it stops bracing against the world. You don't have to do anything now. No fixing, no proving, no hiding. You're not in the chapel anymore. You're not under the stairs. You're not trapped in the itch that wrote shame into your skin. You're here, with the ghosts, with the memories, with the soft knowledge that survival is never clean, but it is sacred. Let's ask something quietly. What are the scabs in your life that no one saw form? What's the red thread you still wear around your wrist long after the danger has passed? Whose name have you whispered only in your mind because you were afraid speaking it aloud would bring them back, or bring back what they represent? Who sat with you wordless when you couldn't say anything at all? And who do you want to sit beside now that your hands are steady again? These are the stories we carry in silence. And silence, when we hold it with care, can be a kind of love. So if tonight you find yourself drifting into sleep, know that it's okay if you don't remember every chapter. Know that it's okay if all you remember is a feeling. A soft cloth, a quiet breath, the moment someone didn't turn away. That's enough. Because healing rarely announces itself. It arrives like sleep, slow, steady, unremarkable, until we realize we're resting. So rest now. Let your breath slow to its own rhythm. If the itch returns, meet it with kindness. If the memory stings, let it pass like wind. If your body curls tight again, tell it thank you. It's trying to protect you the only way it knows how. But remind it gently, lovingly, that it can loosen now. The war has gone quiet. The skin has calmed. The story has been told. And you are not broken. You are not ruined. You are not too late. You are here. And you get to rest now. If you're still awake, that's all right. There's no rush. Healing never came quickly, and neither does sleep. But you've made it this far, through the silence, through the scabs, through the story. You listened, you breathed, you stayed. That's enough for tonight. Let the images blur now. Let the blanket grow heavier. Let the war drift farther away like a dream that no longer needs to be remembered. Your body is quiet, your breath is steady, and the worst is behind you. There's nothing left to do. Nothing left to prove. Just this moment. Just this breath. Just you, soft and whole and safe beneath the weight of rest. Close your eyes, if they haven't closed already. Let the silence hold you now. Let it wrap around you like the gentlest truth. You are still here. And you are allowed to sleep. Good night, traveler. You are not alone. Not now. Not ever.